Good evening, everybody. As you guys are joining, the only thing I would love to ask for you guys to do is if you could, tell us what you're drinking. Love to know what you guys are enjoying this evening, and maybe it's something we could talk about. Also, please enjoy a picture of my son who decided to, I guess, take care of his own Parmesan. And I turned my head for a second, and you know what? He's everybody. I feel like he is just us when nobody's looking. Pretty sure I eat the same amount of Parmesan. I just do it a little bit at a time. So hats off to Dash. Ooh. Mom, you want to be in my live video? Oh, I think Mom meant to. I don't know if she meant to, but let's see if she... Mom, I don't think you meant to get to press that button, did you?
I don't think I meant to either.
At the same time, I think this is perfect. Happy Mother's Day a few days early.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, I'm glad to join you, but I will back off now.
Hey, that's up to you. I'm the one that accepted you. So, Mom, I love you. I just thought, hey, if you want to be on it, shoot, I'll put you on for the very beginning. But you got to pay attention. There's a lot of cool stuff we're going to be talking about pretty darn soon, though, Mom. Did you get the wine?
I look forward to it. But
do you have the wine with you?
What?
Do you have the wine with you?
I do, but I don't have the bottle right here.
That's okay. You don't need to show me the bottle. I believe you. I don't think you've ever, really lied to me.
It's the red wine you sent me this week.
That's right. Both red and white.
That was part of our regular monthly.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. All right, Mom. Well, hey, enjoy. I just thought, hey, if you wanted to join, might as well. All right. I love you.
Love you. Bye.
Bye. All right, everybody. That was my mom, Linda Kleinert, and that, again, is my son. And just give us a few more minutes, and we're going to actually add David from Mastro Scheidt. So let me take the picture of my son off for all intents and purposes. All right. There you go. So, guys, tonight we're going to be talking to David Scheidt from Mastro Scheidt. He has one of the coolest backgrounds I feel like I have ever read about. Granted, I do feel a little weird. Each week I try to do some research, and it turns into semi-stalking. I feel a little bit like I'm trying to prevent a catfish of some sort. But at the same time, it also has helped me uncover some really cool things I can't wait to talk to him, whether it's food, traveling. He was also a financial advisor for a long time, and now he's making some outstanding wines. Not to mention, the wines that he makes, they span from single vineyard, outstanding high-end bottles, to also just what I would call table wine that you can enjoy with your friends. Very Italian, actually. A jug of wine for you just to enjoy with a meal, like you're hanging out with friends. No matter what, there's something on the table. And so it's kind of fun to see, like, okay, what's his methodology? What's he thinking about? And, I can't wait to be able to talk to him with you guys. But also, the other things I wanted to be able to let you guys know is that next week, we're going to be doing this again. I just got confirmation right before the show that both Josh and Gary are both going to be joining yet again. We're going to be talking about a few wines. They don't know what we're talking about yet, but it's going to be talking about a few wines that we are now going to be highlighting because the summer is here and it's starting to heat up. So can't wait to be able to do that next week. Also, guys, tonight, when we talk about Mastro Scheidt, make sure to note wherever he's selling his wine. I have one of his wines, but still, he has so many other ones. So make sure, as we talk about things, we're not going to just talk about this one wine, but also talk about a few of the other ones. Not to mention, if you do want this wine, though, we have an amazing deal going on right now. If you guys check out the website, for $65, you get 2 bottles of wine, shipping included, for what this bottle is normally worth, well over $70. So I would love to be able to send you this wine for you to enjoy. And after we talk about it tonight, I know you're going to be able to enjoy it even more. I don't know why. It's just the way the mind works. When you know the background of the story, you enjoy it more. That's why I'm a huge Star Wars fan as well as Star Trek fan. Never really got into Lord of the Rings. Sorry. So with all that, I do want to add David right now and have him talk much more than me. Because again, one of the most awkward things on Instagram Live is just talking to a phone and nobody responding to me. Yeah. Awkward. All right. Let's get him on. It works.
It works. Magic. Thank you.
It is. The magic of the technology, I guess? I don't know. I feel like few things are now shocking me when it comes down to technology. In fact, I have much higher expectations. I get frustrated much more easily with Wi-Fi than I ever did. I blame it partially on COVID, but really, I just am getting spoiled. So I know, but no, this worked perfectly. How are you doing? How's life for you right now over the past couple of weeks, months now? How are you doing?
Well, you know what? It's not so bad. I'm cooking pretty much 2 or 3 times a day, maybe.
Nice.
Definitely dinners. We got to, we split up duties. I make no bean dishes whatsoever. Leighton Lizzie on Instagram, also known as Mary Beth. She's in charge of beans. I make no illusions about my bean skills. They're not good.
Wait, you're saying beans. Like, so you don't make beans. Like, you don't make pinto, you don't make, white beans, you don't make any beans.
All I do is I take her, whatever she's done with that pot of beans, and then transform it into whatever the dish is going to be. So if it's like cassoulet, I'll make the cassoulet, so the duck confit and sausage and that sort of thing. But the bean portion of cassoulet, I take no responsibility for, which is good because she is much better at beans than I am. There's no question about that.
I cannot tell you how excited that the first topic that we're covering
is beans.
It's beans.
That's right. Beans. That's right. Well, I heard your preamble. I know you like Star Wars. I know you're a Dune fan.
I am a Dune fan.
You're a Dune fan. But also, if you go back to Space Ghost, Coast to Coast.
Yes.
Brock used to do a funny beans. I like beans. And so, if you like Space Ghost, Coast to Coast, you gotta like Brock. And Brock had the.
He was definitely the best. He was definitely the best part of Space Ghost, Coast to Coast.
That's right.
Now you're making me feel like this is my own version of Space Ghost, Coast to Coast. Like I'm living.
In many ways it is. In many ways it is. We're just channeling that Space Ghost, Coast to Coast into Instagram Live. Unscripted Instagram Live.
As it should be. I feel like that's where the best stuff comes from anyway. In fact, I'm surprised that I have not gotten more inappropriate, conversations. The comments I can't speak for, but yeah, because it's unscripted, I'm pretty impressed with the guests I've had so far. Not to say I want to hold you back by any means. You just speak from the heart. Whatever comes out, safe place.
So you did so besides the beans, things during time of COVID here.
Yeah.
So sort of getting back to basics, right? I've always, my background, so I'm half Italian, half Russian German, born and raised in Fresno. My parents, my mom, accomplished home cook, 100% Italian. So obviously I channel a lot of those recipes growing up. And when you think about what it is that we grew up with, a lentil soup, a minestrone soup, a pizza that was not circular but rectangular. Okay, that's classic Southern Italian cooking. Meatballs, orecchiette, the little ear pastas.
Yeah,
are one of those. So all of those sorts of things sort of color what I'm going to be doing in the kitchen, and then what wines am I going to pair. So I make generally about 10 or 11 wines, and so wines, and that could be by varietal or it could be a blend. But then I kind of take that as part of the inspiration. But really, you know what? I'm not trying to say, oh well, tonight we've got to pair, shameless plug, 1TL with steak. But sometimes it's like, well, you know what? We really want to have steak tonight. So we're probably going to have cat, right? It just makes sense.
It does.
We're not gonna drink white wine. It's just not gonna happen.
No.
You know. So
No.
that's where we start from. We start from what is it that's available? What is it that we have in the pantry? And is that just something like polenta with red sauce and sausages? Or is it a pasta? Or like tonight we did Thai food, you know?
Yeah.
So Thai green curry over basmati rice or excuse me, jasmine rice. Real simple. So
That's awesome.
yeah, and then we'll just work off that for the week.
You know what? I got to say, okay, one, I love that when I ask you, hey, how are you doing during COVID? Your first response, food.
Yeah.
Boom. Food was the first thing that goes. And part of me feels like, yes, that makes so much sense because before you said that, you said we went back to the basics. And I feel like when you think about what basics are, it's a table with food and family. It's like, this is the basics. We got to go back to old school. You're talking old country, southern Italy.
Right.
What do we have in our pantry? What can we do with that? And then how can we enjoy each other as well as this food?
Yep.
As much as we can in the situation we got. I'm like, David, that's perfect. Perfect. And I feel like that's exactly what we all, and probably not as curated and well cooked ways are doing at home. Like I know that we made pasta tonight. But the pasta that I had, I could show again the picture of my son and what he did to his pasta really quick. But at the same time, that's him with Parmesan. So, I mean, like, when it comes down to it, like, I feel like everybody's got their own way of doing it, but we all have to go back to our basics, for sure.
Right.
But can I ask you this then? Hey, I want to bring you back to, okay, before this happened, you're making wine. Talk to me about Mastro Scheidt. Okay, so you make a bunch of wine, you said around 10 to 11. How long have you been doing it? Do you do it every year? I mean, just tell me a little bit about winemaking for you.
Sure. So I've technically only made wine 13 times.
Okay.
Because up here in the Northern Hemisphere, we've only got one harvest, you know, that we can do in basically September and October.
Yeah.
To harvest grapes and make wine, right? So that means I've done it 13 different seasons. So as we date back, we go back to 2007, and I made 3 wines. The 1TL was actually one of the original wines that we made. It was known then as double barrel.
Okay.
So 1 ton lot, which is the 1TL, makes basically 2 barrels of wine, which is 50 cases of wine. Okay. And so the 1TL was one of those original wines that I had made 50 cases of. I made 2 other wines. In essence, the signature wine, which is our signature cab, 100% Dry Creek Cabernet. Generally, that was going to be about 50 cases of wine, so another ton. And then the Dry Creek Valley Cabernet, also known as our DCV. So that was the original 3 wines that I had made, and pretty much had made those 3 wines for 3 or 4 years, pretty much up until about 2011. And so that was sort of the start of things, is making about 150 cases total. I had a previous career in investment management in San Francisco. And so I was doing both because the manageability of a 50 case allotment isn't actually too bad, right? It's relatively straightforward. They're all the same varietal. It all gets harvested at relatively the same time. So the time commitment there isn't dramatic. Cabernet needs to age, so it's not as though I had anything to sell for a couple of years anyway.
Yeah,
so it didn't. So that cycle hadn't started yet. But once the cycle starts, in other words, once we get into sort of the second year, third year, well, then guess what? You make wine each season. So I skipped 2008 because 2008, the Great Recession. Now it's probably going to be tough.
Most of us skipped 2008, not necessarily because we wanted to, but just because.
Right. So I didn't make any wine that year. And then in 2009, I came back, did it again, and then continually have made a harvest every year since then, and have gradually expanded the overall wine portfolio from just Cabernet to things like Sangiovese, Merlot, Dolcetto, Zinfandel, Semillon, Sauv Blanc, Petit Syrah. I mean, I've made a lot of different wines, Barbera, used a lot of different varietals. Sometimes they would be coalesced into a single blend, or sometimes they'd be varietally specific. So it just depends, right? It just depends on the season.
And so can I ask you too, like, that's what you're kind of going off of. It depends on the season. And do you like, hey, you know what I really want to do? I really want to do a Sangiovese, or I really want to do the Rosso, which is the large
jug,
right?
Yeah.
And so, like, do you have the idea of the wine that you want to make before you go out, or do you kind of see what's the vineyard doing? Like, what are we able to get from that certain valley? Because you're still around the same area in Sonoma County, aren't you?
Right.
Or are you now pulling from a lot of different regions?
Yeah, a great one. So, I primarily, and again, originally it pulled only from Sonoma County, then which would include Alexander Valley, Dry Creek Valley, Russian River, right, or the primary big areas. I mean, there's others, Sonoma Valley and the like, Moon Mountain, all the other appellations. But then started picking fruit from Mendocino County.
Okay.
And a lot of Sangiovese, Barbera, and Italian varietals are grown up there, as well as Lake County, which is adjacent to that. That, along with Napa, is known as all those North Coast Appalachian wines, which is one sort of big conglomerate of areas. And then I actually buy fruit from Nathan Cardella here in Mendota. So Cardella Winery. I buy fruit from Nathan. I actually make the Rosé of Sangiovese out of that fruit. At least I have the last several years. So that's another local connection. I bought from Shane over at Toca Madera. I bought some Alicante Boucher from him a couple years ago, and sold that off to. I made it my style and sold that wine off to sommelier in the Bay Area.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I feel like what you're describing too is what happens a lot of times. I mean, you started talking about the cycle. Like once this hamster wheel starts, the momentum sometimes just takes over. And not only that, but then like all of a sudden, you're not just a winemaker. You're a wine broker. You're a wine consultant.
Correct.
You are also sommelier. You are a tasting room attendant. You are pretty much everything. Is that how you would describe like what's happened, or what? How would you describe your role today? So 2007, first vintage, double barrel. We won't let Firestone know about it, but whatever. Yeah. And then you have like
you are correct. You can get cease and desist orders for that, right?
Whatever. Okay. But at the same time, then you get all the way to 2020. That's a long time to be making wine. You got to be wearing a lot of hats. How do you manage all this stuff?
Right. So I'll answer a couple questions because I see Josh asking a question. If you were wine, what wine would you be in wine?
Oh, yes, please.
Well, come on. It's got to be Cabernet because Cab is king, Josh. Woo! Come on, buddy. There was also another question in there I saw about yeasts and yeast selection.
Steve asked about yeast.
Yeah. So with yeast selection, again, I can go native or non-catalog yeast. I think it perhaps is a little bit more accurate because all yeasts are native. It's just a matter of whether they've been cultivated into a dry yeast form or not, and then catalog.
Yeah.
So if it's D80, for instance, D80 is present in nature, obviously somewhere, whether it's in Europe. But as a dry yeast equivalent, it's here. I've used D80. But with some of my Sangiovese fermentations, it's been an uncatalogued yeast because it was a spontaneous fermentation in tank. And so unless I did a Scorpion's DNA test, I have no idea what started and finished that particular wine other than it was aggressive, it was clean, it didn't stink, and it made a really nice wine, right? So from that perspective, I look at different yeasts. I look at where they're from. RP15, for instance, is a yeast that was cultivated by Jeff Cohn up in the rock pile appellation, hence the RP, rock pile. And I've used the RP15 yeast in some Zinfandel fermentations. And what I'll do is I'll find a small batch of the wine or the grapes that I want to ferment, and I will use that specific yeast on that specific lot, and then keep that separate from everything else, so that I can see what sort of the mechanics are of it, what the flavor profile is, different from either a spontaneous fermentation that may have happened already with another Zinfandel, and then perhaps something that I use more readily for a Zinfandel fermentation, for instance. So then you can actually do some compare and contrast,
That's fine.
Sort of after the fact.
And that sounds
say,
really
what do I like?
scientific too, because I'm like, what you're describing too is a really methodical way of being able to almost like, hey, what is the best way that we can like make this wine stand out, or we can make this wine really be who it's supposed to be when it grows up, you know? And when it comes down to also, you're describing this battle that not a battle, but I'm sure you hear this conversation about like, hey, natural wines versus non-natural. What does that even mean? And people talk about native yeast that is already existed in grapes, not really doing much, whatever. And then also those that add. And, it's kind of tough because you also highlighted like, well, they're all natural. Like they're all yeast that are cultivated. These aren't really yeast that are, coming from some sort of genetically modified, whatever government agency. But at the same time, like that's a really cool way to go about it. And also a good highlight of like why there's a good benefit of being scientific about choosing the yeast too. Because then all of a sudden you're able to pick the one that best matches what you're trying to get the flavor profile at the end.
Sure. And because the facility that I do work in with about four or five other winemakers, each of them have their own protocols. Each of them have their own styles. Each of them have their own sort of, what they're looking for in their wine. Do they like them ultra ripe?
Yeah.
And plush and oaky, or do they like them leaner, in a style that's more austere? And I can see all those things happening. And what are their protocols? Again, I'll go back to the food metaphor, and that is a lot of winemakers are pretty cagey about what they do with their wines. In particular, I'll tell you exactly what I do with them because I also cook, and so you can get me and my mom together with the same exact ingredients and make a completely different minestrone soup because our techniques are different. And so we've got exactly the same set of base ingredients. Well, guess what? We're going to make totally different soups. And same goes with winemaking.
Yes.
That's why I don't worry so much about, what it is that I do. And I'm happy to share that with people because, hey, look, you're going to make your own soup.
Yeah, you are. And also you just described, hey, if you really want to get on this hamster wheel, be my guest. This is it's not easy either.
No.
Like, it does sound and is so rewarding. Like we are all right now about to enjoy the literal fruit of your labor. But at the same time, like, there's not as much, there are some cagey winemakers, but actually, David, one thing I've noticed is that in the wine industry, it feels very old school. Like the fact of the matter is, if you're in the industry, like you go to a tasting room and say, hey, I'm in the industry, and they still have the discount just because, hey, you're in the industry. And that's something that I don't see really in a lot of other places. Like you don't go to, like, if somebody works at Wendy's and goes to McDonald's, they can't be like, hey, I'm in the industry. Good for you. Like,
no, I
that'll
will
be $5.
Yeah, no, I will give a shout out to some local restaurateurs though, especially right now, because a lot of the guys and gals that are in the restaurant business are, giving themselves shout outs because they're all kind of in it together, right?
Yeah.
All the restaurants are still doing takeout only, which is difficult on them. And so when you look at folks in Fresno and Clovis in particular, so whether that's 13 Prime Steakhouse, Annex, Cracked Pepper, if you're looking at Trelio, if you're looking at Schoolhouse, Five, Vino and Spirits, all these folks are kind of in it together. Max's, right? And if you notice on their Instagram accounts, they're giving shout outs to the other restaurants because they're all kind of wondering, when are we going to open? What's it going to look like? How are we going to quote unquote get back to normal? And
what does
we are
look
seeing,
like?
And we are seeing that kind of esprit de corps, that camaraderie amongst the restaurants. I mean, obviously it's a competitive market here in Fresno during the best of times, and right now I think that all those restaurants are trying to figure out a better way. I describe it as kind of just blocking and tackling. It's all about tactics. It's all about, making sure they can do as many covers as possible out the door on a single night. And that's not easy for any of them, right?
No.
They're very, very difficult. So
no, it is. Especially
support
when
those
so many of
locals.
them were not necessarily built, hey, we are a takeout restaurant. This is a service and experience, and now we have to shift entirely during this COVID period and try and make it work. And so I feel like you're right. I've noticed a lot of restaurants kind of put down their swords or shields and just kind of been like, hey, just go out. Please support each other, and that's been really, really cool.
I talked to the folks at Joe's Steakhouse today. They're featuring my wine tonight in their 15th anniversary, special. So all these folks are, and I know all these restaurateurs personally. I don't do big box stores. I don't sell my wine in Costco. I don't sell it in Bevmo. I don't sell it in any chain restaurant in the Valley at all. It's 100% mom and pop driven. So my business locally is heavily dependent upon the restaurants that I'm giving shout outs to, but and not to the corporate toward the corporate restaurants here in town at all. It's 100% proprietor driven, just like my winery.
That's awesome. And that being said, Dave, thanks for letting me carry your wine. Honestly, it's something that should have happened a long time ago. You and I met, I think, at the tasting room with Michael Manjarez a while ago, and I've been able to enjoy your wine so many times, but I have yet to carry it until now. And of course, I picked this one, and it's blowing my socks off. It really is. And so, actually, that might be a perfect time. Can we switch over? Let's taste this. Tell me, a little bit about the 1TL, the background, maybe a photo or two that you might have on your computer. I don't know.
I might have to bring the keyboard in quickly to log back in, but
no worries.
So, a couple things. I see another question here about cold soaks.
Oh yeah, please. Yeah, Mark's got so many things. Mark is a winemaker himself. I know that he has stuff that he makes, not sold, to restaurants or anything, but it's a family winery that he makes wine of his own.
Gotcha. Yeah. So cold soaking is basically once you pick the grapes off the vine, they come in, they're processed, and they can sit destemmed or stemmed. I destem all mine. I don't leave the stems on. My growers don't grow stems; they grow grapes. So we destem everything. That's controversial for some, but anyway.
Some, but
yeah. So what you do is you take those berries and you can leave them uninoculated. And hope the native yeast doesn't take off immediately, which can happen. You put them in a nice cool place in the cellar, or if you have refrigeration, you can put them there. Some people cold soak very long. I don't. Honestly, I'm kind of a 24-hour guy, and we get it rolling. I don't see any real reason to allow some kind of unwanted microbe or mildew or something that I can't control suddenly show up 3 days from now, and I've got to inoculate with a super duper yeast that isn't going to drive any flavor. But kill everything else in there because I let it sit too long. So, again, so it's a control issue. It's a timing issue. Your fruit has to be, in my opinion, would have to be in pristine condition. You can't have fruit come in hot. You have to have a cold area for that fruit to sit. And frankly, the only reason you let it sit for that long, I can get a Brix test on it in 24 hours and we get it ripping. So all the chemistry can come in within a few hours if you test it in the lab. So I don't see any reason to wait on it. So
that makes so much sense. And also, just to nerd out a little bit about chemistry, the whole idea too is we're talking about how do we, when it's cold, that means the basically all of the different the microbes and everything else, they're not moving around. They're not doing as much. So the colder it is, the more stable it is until you want to get it going. And really, boom, go turn into wine. So if you keep it cold, it keeps it stable, and then once you want it to go forth and ferment, then you let it go. Is that really what it is?
Then the temperature is going to raise up during fermentation. The yeast like a warmer environment. They don't want a colder environment. So all those things will add. Well, again, it's an addition or subtraction, right? Are you what are you looking to create in your final product?
Yeah.
Are you looking for more random variables that you can't recreate from year to year? And what is the philosophy that you're doing? So anyway, it's just, again, it's a philosophical issue, and some people do it
It
because
is.
they've been
And you know
trained
what?
to do
I
it.
love that these are the controversial issues that exist in winemaking. I mean,
That's
of
right.
all the things that are going on in
Yeah.
Hollywood and in politics, I mean,
Yeah.
really, cold soaking, native yeast,
Yeah.
these are the big issues.
Yeah, that's right.
These are the
Destemming.
issues.
Right. Destemming fruit.
Destemming.
Exactly. Yeah, it's huge stuff. Okay.
Well,
So
okay, I know there's some more questions coming in, but before we take them, would you mind taking us through a little bit of the 1TL before, we go too much further?
You got it. So 1TL. Let me show you 1TL real quick. That's
There you
1TL.
go.
That's the one Thomas Leroy in a. Then that is the second bin of the 2 bins that go into the back of the truck. That Cabernet that we are drinking here in the 1TL. So that's Cabernet Sauvignon grapes from the Mill Creek Vineyard. And that's Tom Scheidt, my dad. And he's securing the second bin on the back of his half-ton pickup.
Please give a shout out to what brand of pickup, mainly because I come from a family that might have grown up with the Blue Oval.
Yeah, so that's a Ford F-150.
There you go. There you go, Mom. I added my mom to the beginning of this Facebook or Instagram Live.
Yeah.
I know she's watching, so be proud, Mom. We're featuring Ford Motor Company.
Yeah. So anyway, so the 1TL is 100% Cabernet Sauvignon, single vineyard, which is the Mill Creek Vineyard, Mill Creek Road. So it's at sort of a higher point. I don't have any actual valley floor fruit. This fruit's coming from up on a hillside, and so hillsides in Dry Creek, we can get up to like 1,500 feet of elevation. This is more like about 450 feet in elevation. So off the deck up above Madrona Manor. It is a site that basically would get water about 2 times per year, and that's about it.
And it's dry farm. You don't have irrigation going to it then.
We do have irrigation going to it, but that irrigation was so limited because the well itself was pumping at about a gallon per minute, which is it's not even worth talking about, right? But it is. So I can't say
my dad used
really
a term a long time ago. That sounds more like a gerbil peen than it does a faucet train.
So yeah, it's a minuscule amount.
Don't quote me on that though. That was a horrible analogy.
Yeah, roll with it, brother. Roll with it.
Keep going though. You're talking about this amazing vineyard, and I'm talking about gerbil's peen. Go.
Right. So it's so the vineyard's been around for about 35 years or so, and it's in essence a 1 acre parcel that, because of the water deprivation, because of the type of soil it is, which is a serpentine soil, it gets a lot of drainage. And as a result, these grapes are pretty dang small. They look more like blueberries than they do like the Chamber of Commerce photo shoot from Sonoma County, which are these big bulbous grapes, right? They're not. Right. They're about the size of a blueberry. So what you get is a tremendous amount of skin contact with this wine.
Yes. And
as a result, it takes a long time for these skins to break up. So when we do that fermentation process again, we need skins to break. And so we can go back into the processing of it. I tend to do things whole berry. In other words, I don't want the berries to get crushed into mush in the must, in the bin, in the tank.
Yeah.
I want whole berries to go in there, and for that natural process of those skins to break down. Okay. Same goes for this particular wine. Those skins break down naturally, or if I punch them down for the first couple of days to break those skins up in a less sort of aggressive way than it would be in the mechanical tumbler. Okay.
Right.
So after about 2 days, those skins have broken down. The yeast is beginning to do its fermentation trick, And it's, we're making wine here, right? Yeast are eating sugar and creating alcohol. So with Mill Creek, like I said, we've got water deprivation, we've got tiny berries, we've got a lot of sun at this particular site. There's no objective anything around it to hide it in any way. It's on a simple grid pattern, and it goes north-south in this particular location. So all those things being said, I had been working with this since pretty much the beginning, this Mill Creek Vineyard. It was known as Gibson, the Gibson Ranch, which was a 17-acre horse farm. And Kirsten Gibson was the owner of this and several other locations. And so I'd been buying fruit from her pretty much since the beginning. I bought Syrah, Zinfandel, and Cabernet from her. And
let me ask you this, though. All the things that you mentioned so far. So you mentioned, I mean, the amount of water, the size of the berry, the amount of skin contact. What is it doing then? Because when you say that, what I hear then is fruit that is very concentrated in flavor, because it's going to be starved of moisture and it's going to be smaller. And then you have skin contact, so that means more tannins, a little bit more of that puckery feel when you're tasting it. But is that right, or what should we be getting from some of these things you're talking about?
Yeah. So and we're talking about now a 5-year-old, a 5-year-old wine. So
right, this is 2 years older than my son.
Yeah.
Just saying.
That's see.
It's true. It's true. This is older than my son.
So, and by the way, Josh, yes, this particular vineyard's only planted to Cabernet Sauvignon. There's a vineyard.
You guys have a Cab Sauv thing, you and Josh? I'm just saying, like, I'm sensing you and Josh having something.
He's asking questions. I'm answering.
Fair enough.
So, with this particular wine being 5 years old, that's again sort of contrary to how a lot of folks will drink wines these days, which is, I think the average cellar time is 22 minutes, right? From the time that wine was released, because we always want the latest, freshest, biggest, boldest, whatever. Yeah. And this is not, right? And and the beauty of it is we get to see how this wine does develop over time. And when I opened it tonight, I'm sitting here saying, you know what, this is starting to mellow out. Well, yeah. So all those things that you were mentioning, skin contact, tannin development, all those items. Well, guess what? Yeah, after 5 years, those tannins should begin to soften. This wine should become rounder. Yeah. If you drank this wine 2 years ago on release, you'd go, "Wow, this is a monster," right? Yeah. And that doesn't necessarily favor a lot of people's palates. They want this sort of fruit bomb, silky sort of, the velvet glove, kind of concept. Right. Where this is older school sort of winemaking, where, hey, to coin the old phrase from Orson Welles, "We shall sell no wine before it's time," right? Well, I sold a little bit early, but guess what? Time is a benefit to these types of wines, and I think it's great to talk about a wine that's 5 years old, like it's so old, right? I mean, I could pull out a 2011 Signature, which I held back because it tasted like Bordeaux, French Bordeaux, not Sonoma County Cabernet, because it was so austere. It's 12.7 alcohol. This one here is 14.5, right? Yeah. But that's just because it was another warm year in 2015. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes so much sense. And I feel like that is one thing, too, when it comes down to what wine does. Because we were talking about, 24 hours and, cold soak, then boom, making wine. Boom, like all of it's fast. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah. But then you wait. Then you let it basically take care of itself, and you see what happens a lot of ways. And hats off to you, too, because that's not easy. A lot of times, it's all the prep work going into it, isn't it? Yeah. Like the chemistry, making sure there's no weird microbes going on. There's no bad cork rot, no weird stuff going on for it to be able to be a good enough wine to age. Not everybody ages well.
No, not everybody and not every wine.
Not everybody ages as well as you do. Yeah. I mean, seriously, you're making the ball. Seriously, you planned ahead for COVID. I know that, your hairstyle.
That's right.
This was not good.
No,
So.
I do all my own work, so we're good.
Apparently, yeah, you do a lot.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well,
I
hey,
see
now
a
that we've
couple.
talked about it so much, I have to actually try and sip a little bit more.
Sure.
Let's see what I have
Let
here.
me answer a couple questions. So, hey, Jay Rose. Hi, nice to see you. If it could be grown here, what varietals would you like to experiment with? Here in the Valley, I still think that it's the Italian set of varietals, things that are like Nero d'Avola or Negro Amaro, Sagretino, those sorts of things really interest me. Fiano, Trebbiano, that sort of stuff to me would be the greatest things to play around with here. Not necessarily all the French Bordeaux varietals, but varietals that are more accustomed to a hot climate, for sure.
I will say, actually, there was one experiment that I got to try. It was a Montepulciano that was grown in the valley, and that turned out really good.
Okay.
Turned out great. It was just an experiment at O'Neill Vineyards or O'Neill Vineyards and Distillers. But yeah, it turned out really good. Another good question is, what would you pair with 1TL?
So with 1TL, again, we've got to go with steak. We got to go with
steak.
It's got to be the ribeyes, the New Yorks. But there is a fat issue, right, to think about when we're saying New York versus filet versus ribeye.
Yeah.
And so when you look at those sort of three classics, I'd say 1TL and ribeye is where it's going to be. You want something a little fattier. I'd even go with a lamb rack. And I'm a fan of those sorts of things. I would also say if you wanted to grill a steak, great, but I'm going to pan fry it in butter.
Yeah.
And that's how I'm going to do this steak with this particular wine without question.
That's great.
Yeah.
Asking for a friend, if somebody maybe only ate vegetables, hypothetically speaking.
Yes.
What would you pair it with?
Mushrooms.
Mushrooms.
I did a couple weeks ago. I did a recipe that when I was in Italy back in 2009, I learned from a chef more about porcini mushrooms than I wanted to know, but it was incredibly valuable because the density of flavor on mushrooms and especially porcinis, whether that's dry or fresh, and you can use a combination, mayatakes, matsutakis. If you omitted the veal or beef from a classic sort of bolognese or sugo sauce and substituted mushrooms, but did the exact same process that you did to cook that meat-based bolognese, I wouldn't hesitate to serve any of my bigger wines, more forward wines, and I would omit the tomatoes in that, by the way, because there's too much acid there. Yeah. But if you've just got the onions, the celery, the carrot, the mushrooms, and a real deep reduction on your sauce, that's where we're talking. And that could be vegan, by the way, because we can do it with olive oil. And
they're making fun of me because I am relatively vegan. I don't want to say it too loud, just because I'm in Clovis right now. But at the same time,
Yeah. Well, but that was exactly the point. Some of my friends that I was with were vegetarians, which again is an anathema in Italy, but vegetarians and vegans, and it was a challenge, right? Because I want to eat the food too, so now you've got to make it with an intense amount of flavor, and so I do things in that particular sauce which I don't do in others. Another one is you have to add a high quality balsamic vinegar after the cooking process is done, and I'm talking about a syrupy balsamic to that sauce as a finishing element. You incorporate into it, it darkens it up, it richens it up, it adds that umami characteristic.
Yes.
That you've already got boatloads in your with your mushroom base.
Yes.
But what you've done is just expand the flavor profile in your mouth. That's awesome. So that addition is huge. Now you can't, if you're gonna go vegan, you can't do the cheese, but again, all those elements can layer on top of each other, and you're talking about long cooking times. So anyway, that's a thought.
No. Hey, this is important. again, asking for a friend.
Yeah.
Hey, there is an important question though from Mark, and
Yes.
can we buy the 1TL? And the answer is yes. Actually, one thing I do want to point out is that it's in our wine club this month, and if you would like this bottle along with another bottle, all you have to do is go to our website or follow the link in our profile and just join the wine club. I will send it to you tomorrow. It will be there by Friday. So 2 bottles, including this. There's a limited number. I only bought a couple cases, and I'm looking at all the wine. Like, yeah, there's one of them, and there's just a few more over there. So please act quick. But at the same time, if you want this along with one other bottle, just sign up for the wine club, and you'll get it. And I am so excited for you to get it too, because this is something that, in my opinion too, like it is not the standard Cabernet, where a lot of times the Cabernets have been, like you said, fruit bomb, really big. Like there's a lot going on here, and I really love how complex it is. But okay, we have only a certain amount of time left.
Yeah.
So I gotta ask you,
Sure.
how the hell did you end up making wine? Because I'm like, what? Like,
yeah.
I mean, you started in finance and then you ended up doing wine. What? Just tell me that transition. We can't necessarily go like, hey, I was born, in St. Agnes and I grew up in a certain place. Like, but were you born in St. Agnes?
I was, yeah. The old one, the original one.
I didn't do that much research, by the way.
Yeah. The original one on West Pine. Yeah.
There you go. Not the new fancy one off
No. The old one.
But no, tell me, how did you get there though? So you were doing finance in the Bay Area, but then you ended up making wine from Sonoma in Fresno.
Mm-hmm. Right. So I'll give you the Patrick Swayze line from Roadhouse. I guess I'm just lucky. And
then you grab my throat and you break it. That's what you do.
Since we've been talking about movies since the opener, I got to put a Swayze.
You got to follow the theme all the way through. Keep going.
So again, going back to 2007, there was an opportunity. I living in the Bay Area since '97. I got to know a lot of winemakers and vineyard owners, and so a lot of the wines that I was already drinking, so like this one here tonight, I was actually drinking this vineyard, these Cabernet grapes back in 04, 03, 02 from another winemaker.
Okay.
Who's out of business now. Had just left the business. He said, I'm done with it. Right. He was getting older and he was just done. He goes, you want the contract? And I said, I'll take the contract. And that was in 2007. And he walked away and never to return to wine again. Right. It was a portion of his life for about 15 or so years. And he says, I'm done with it all. And he says, you want to take a couple of my contracts? And I said, well, sure. Because I like your wine a lot anyway. And I like where that sourcing's from. And so I was, fortunate in that the timing was right. The grape contracts themselves weren't huge. I mean, they were, 1 ton a piece. So I can get that toe in the water position early on. And living up in Healdsburg at the time, it was a great opportunity to get together with other winemakers and learn from them in a very non-confrontational, controversial fashion. They saw me as just somebody that was an enthusiast as opposed to competition. And still to this day,
you were a gentleman winemaker.
Pretty much. And the truth of the matter is that I don't sell any wine in Sonoma County really at all. All my sales are from like Stockton down to Palm Springs and San Diego, right?
Well done.
I'm still not any competition to anybody in Sonoma County or Healdsburg because
but you are spreading the good news in the valley, which I feel like is a better thing to do. I mean, like that's great. That's a good news.
Yeah, and that was the strategy all along was because I grew up here, because I've got a lot of friends here and all my family other than my brother, this seemed like a from a business standpoint, the best way for me to start a winery was not with 1,000 other winemakers in Healdsburg, but maybe 24 people in the valley, of which some of them are my friends, and I know them already anyway. I've
Yeah, no,
shouted out
you were
to
literally
Shane and
describing
Nathan.
what I've heard is called the blue ocean strategy, where like people try and go after where all the chum is already being devoured in a really
Mm-hmm.
crowded market,
Mm-hmm.
or you go to the blue ocean where
Correct.
nobody is going after the fish, and you enjoy yourself. And I feel like that's brilliant. That is a great idea. But did you teach yourself how to make wine, or how did you know how to make wine? Because you're now
Yeah.
obviously a seasoned professional that knows way more than even the average winemaker. But
Yeah.
how did you learn?
Yeah. So I am self-taught, and I come from an analytical background. So those years in
Yes.
finance, I managed a significant amount of assets globally. I'm used to a process. I'm used to spreadsheets and the math and all that. That doesn't bother me at all. And what it is investing is a repeatable process. So is winemaking. It's a repeatable process.
True.
The difference is the source inputs are market risk, right? So that beta,
Mm-hmm.
that undiversifiable risk is the risk that's in the vineyard every year. It's the risk from Mother Nature. It's the risk of another fire, every single season now since I've started to forget how many fires we've got. Those are the sorts of things that we have to deal with as winemakers and professionals in Healdsburg, right? I mean, fires have become a way of life now every single year. How do we adapt to that?
True.
And so having that process, having that repeatable process, having the ability to teach myself and learn from other people on the job training, so to speak, and just sort of watch and learn and do. And that's been effective. It's the same going back full circle. Did I teach myself how to cook, or did I watch my mom enough to figure out how to make a pizza dough? Right.
Yeah.
I've been cultivating yeast since I was 5 years old with my mother. So
that could be quotable. I've been cultivating yeast since I was 5.
Yeah.
That's something to put on your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, exactly. And so you think about that. The basics of a pizza dough are the basics of starting a yeast to create your wine. So that process is horribly scientific, but the truth of the matter is people do it think about how many people are making sourdough starter right now in time of COVID, right?
My wife bakes bread almost every other day now.
Yeah.
And by the way, we never baked bread before COVID.
Never
did.
And
tons of people have a Dutch oven. We bake bread all the time.
Right. Totally. It's a big deal now, right? So when you think about those basics of, if you're making sourdough bread at home, you got some of the basics, perhaps the hard part of making wine, right? Is that initial inoculation period. Now, are there a bunch of other things that go on over the success of 24 months? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I've said that to the students at Fresno State, of which I've spoken to many times over the years. It takes about 2 months to make wine. It takes 12 months to sell it. And so this is part of being a sole proprietor, winemaker, salesman, bottle washer, is having a set of skills that you go beyond the lab.
Yeah, exactly. In all honesty, that probably is the biggest difference when it comes down to working at a large company for finance or data analytics, or whatever it is you're doing.
Sure.
And then running a business, because no longer are you siloed into a specific niche of skills. Now you need to kind of be a Renaissance man. I mean, like, you are literally back in Italy, during Renaissance, and trying to figure out how to do all these things. And you have to be able to survive. Otherwise, the margins in wine will kill you. Like, you won't be around. And it's kind of a bummer. But at the same time, the fact that you've been doing this now for 13 years, hey, well done, man. Especially the wine that you produce is outstanding. Yeah, and we only have a little bit of time left, so I wanted to ask you a few things. One, I got to remind everybody, if you want some of the 1TL, people, you're welcome to join the wine club. It's a link on my profile, as well as the website. But David, what about the rest of your wine? You have so many other wines. Could you just give some shout outs, as well as places that people could go to buy? Yes. Yeah. Where do they go?
Yeah. So, take this one, for instance, Sangiovese. This is 100% Sangiovese out of North Coast. We've been selling that wine at, Schoolhouse, Annex Kitchen, for years now, both of those institutions. Superstrata. Superstrata right now is part of Vino and Friends or Chuck's wine club right now for this month.
Nice.
Superstrata is a blend of Sangiovese and Cab. Chuck's a big believer in that wine.
Nice.
We got the one of the other originals, right? DCV Cab. This one's at the market every day, all day. I've got, and it's also at Trelio right now. In fact,
nice.
This one here is part of Chris's tri-tip meal right now.
Oh.
So you can get this along with the whole tri-tip meal and the whole business, the Paquito beans, the whole shoot match. It all comes together. I just dropped off more wine today, so
nice.
It's doing well. And then
That's
one
awesome.
of the most popular is the Cuvée, which is another huge seller here in the Valley, all the way down to, this one goes all the way down to San Diego. I just shipped, I saw my buddy Josh come on. I just shipped him some wine today and his clientele down at Taken Baja. So in fact, I'll
nice.
give a shout out to Josh as well, man. He took me down to Valle de Guadalupe last year, a couple different times. And it was a fantastic experience down in the Valle. So whole new wine world down there. A lot of great people, a lot of great wines, a lot of great winemakers. So nice. Another great experience, not too far away.
I can only, you know what? I wish we had another hour to be able to go through your travel experiences, because I did, again, do a little research. You've been to a few places, sir.
Yeah,
you've been to a few places.
Yeah, one or two. Well,
yeah.
I'd be happy to come on back. We can talk about whatever you'd like. But it does. We can talk about wine. Cool. We can talk about sci-fi. We can talk about whatever you want.
Hey, I know the new Dune movie's coming out. I'm just saying.
I saw that.
It's coming out. Well, before you get off, though, I do want to be able to ask, when it comes down to what you think people or what we can do to help restaurants, others, what do you think we should be doing to be able to help other people during this time?
Buy direct through the restaurants. Don't do it through Uber Eats. Don't do it through DoorDash or none of that. You're taking money out of the restaurant's pocket, right? So buy direct. If you're going to support the local folks, those companies are taking up to 30% away from the restaurant just for the service itself. You want to use Instacart for your Costco stuff, fine, but don't have Uber Eats, deliver local restaurant stuff, man, because they're not doing the local restaurant any good. Go direct, 100%.
I love it. I love it. All right, last question. What is the first thing you're going to do when the world opens back up?
Well, you know what? I'm probably going to go to a bar and have a drink.
Perfect. Hey, with that, I got to say, I'm going to say bye to you. I'm going to say a few other things to everybody else, but David, thank you. And
thank you.
I have to message you because I have a request by a few people for a few more of your wines. And we might need to talk about carrying a few more, if that's okay.
I'd love to. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, David. Talk to you later.
All right.
Guys, thank you so much for joining. We only have a little bit of time left, but I want to remind you, if you guys want the 1TL, normally it is, I know it is well worth it, but at the same time, it is normally closer to $75. But at the same time, if you want this wine along with one other wine, join the wine club. $65, send you both. That includes shipping. It's on the website right now. And Steve, I saw your comment. I know I'm going to get text from you afterwards about all your ideas, but I will work with David to carry a few more of his wines. So expect maybe an email if you want it, but definitely a post on Instagram of how you can get a few more of his wines from Bricks and Barrel. Next week, guys, we're doing this again, apparently. So next week, we're going to have Josh and Gary both on again, and we're going to be going through a few wines, specifically as the heat intensifies. And I know at least in the Valley, I know in other places, we're going to be talking about wines that you can chill and enjoy. So Josh, white wines. Gary, I got a red wine you can chill. I'm really excited. Guys, thank you again. And if anybody has anybody that we should interview, please message me. I would love to be able to have more people on this show. But with that, guys, thanks so much. I'll see you next week.